Shabbos Daf Yud Aleph continues another 5 statements in the name of the person who said the statements we've seen so far. That takes us to the last phrase in the Mishnah which discussed interrupting for Shemon Esrei. The Gemara wants to know why that's repeated. Then we get to a new Mishnah which lists 4 halachos, or 5, which are enacted to prevent somebody from being Mechal Shabbos by mistake. Then the Gemara is going to want to know, do we enact things like that to prevent a person from doing an Esrei D'Oraisa only, or even to prevent an Esrei D'Rabbanan? And there will be a number of proofs to the two sides of that discussion. The Gemara brings 5 more statements that were said by Rav Bar Machas in the name of Rav Bar Giyur in the name of Rav. First is as follows: the halacha is that you have to make sure that the shul is the highest roof in the city. You shouldn't have any other roofs that are higher. We learned that out of the pasuk which says the Rabbi Mesbeis L'Kein L'Hamid is Charvoisav, that we were able to, this is in Ezra, we were able to save this city, and we were able to have a Geder B'Yehuda B'Yerushalayim, have a fence protecting Yehuda and Yerushalayim by making sure the roof of the Beis HaMikdash was taller than anything else. Implication being that had other roofs been taller, then there would have been destruction. The Gemara says, Rav Ashi says, that it was me who saved Machasia from being destroyed, because I was Rajiva there and I told them to make sure not to build a roof higher than the shul. The Gemara says, what I mean, Machasia was destroyed. The Gemara says, Machasia was destroyed for a different reason, but not because of this. And the Gemara also says that if the roofs are not usable roofs, they're decorative, such as roof of a fort or the roof of a tower, so then it's not a problem, it's allowed to be taller than the shul. Next statement that he said, that you have to be careful to avoid working for people that are going to be tough on you. So you should try not to work for an Arab, but worse than an Arab is working for an Edomite, which is today's forerunner of a Christian. Worked in that as a Chabar. They were a clan that were especially destructive. Worse than that is to work for a Talmud Chacham, because it's hard to maintain proper covet for him, and if you make a mistake you may get punished. And worse than that is to work for an orphan or a widow, because if you hurt them, and they're very easy to hurt, then it can be very dangerous for you. Next thing that he said was a list of sicknesses which you should prefer. You should try, any sickness is not as bad as the sickness of the stomach. Any pain, any intermittent pain is not as bad as a heart pain. Any brief light ache is not as bad as a headache. And any evil is not as bad as an evil woman. Somebody who chooses a wife for the wrong reasons can be stuck in a very unenviable situation. Okay, next thing he said was that if all the seas were ink, and all the marshes were quills, and all the skies were paper, and all the people in the world were writing, it would not be enough to write the thoughts of the government, the king, and the leaders have to consider so many different variables and so many different issues, we cannot possibly understand them all. There's a lot of discussion here amongst the Achron and what the point of this is. Could be that it's defending the government, could be that it's saying that the government can't possibly get it right with all these things. And it says, what's the pasuk that shows us this? Shemayim l'rum va'aretz l'emek, the sky is high, the earth is deep, and it's not enough to investigate the minds of kings. Okay, next thing he said, this is the last one, a fast is good for taking away a bad dream, the meanings, the implications of a bad dream, as fire is good at burning up a ball of flax fibers. The Gemara says, but that's only if you fast on the day of the dream, and Rabbi Yosef said that's even if it's on Shabbos, you're allowed to. The Gemara has a story here. Rabbi Shua, son of Rabbi Idi, went to the house of Rav Ashi, and they fed him special high quality meat. The third born calf is the highest quality meat there is, but he didn't eat. So they said to him, why don't you eat? He said, I'm fasting. They said to him, what do you mean? Rabbi Yehuda said that if you have a special reason to break your fast, you're allowed to, and then you'll have to finish your fast a different day. So he said, no, I'm fasting because of a dream, and Rav Bar Machas said in the name of Rav Bar Giyur, the name of Rav, that it works best on the day of the dream, and the Gemara even said, Rabbi Yosef said that you even let a fast because of that on Shabbos. So you see that I should not push off this fast until a different day. The Gemara now refers back to the Mishnah, which had a list of a number of activities that if one started them, he does not have to interrupt what he is doing in order to daven Shemona Esrei if the time has arrived. And the Mishnah then says, but if Kriya Shema has arrived, then he does have to interrupt. And then the Mishnah adds, but for Tefillah you don't have to interrupt. So the Gemara says, that's repetitive. That's the same thing we said in the beginning of the Mishnah. Why'd I have to repeat that? So the Gemara answers, that's not talking about all these activities anymore. That's talking about somebody who's learning, and it's teaching us a new halacha. Somebody's in the middle of learning, although he does have to interrupt his learning for Kriya Shema, he does not have to interrupt his learning in order to go daven. Kriya Shema is a d'oraisa, davening is a d'rabbanan. Now the Gemara says this only applies, Rav Yechon says this only applies to people like Rav Shimon ben Yochai, who learned all day and he wasn't busy with other things. He wasn't busy working to earn a living. But people like us, if we can interrupt our learning to earn a living, we can certainly interrupt our learning to go daven. Now the Gemara says, hold on a second, I have a brisa that says that you do not have to interrupt your learning not for Shema Nasrei and not for Shema. But you're telling me that this Mishnah says that you do have to interrupt for Shema, just not for Shema Nasrei. Where it says that brisa was talking about in Yavne when the Chachamim got together to decide whether it should be a leap year or not. That was a very serious conversation, and they did not interrupt that even for Shema. Like we have a statement of the elders of Hagrunya, named Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Tzadok, when we were in Yavne discussing making into a leap year, we didn't stop the discussion even for Shema. This takes us to the Mishnah. The Mishnah discusses several enactments that the Rabbanan, the Chazal, made in order to prevent people from doing an Aveira. This immediately relates to what we saw earlier, that they made certain enactments. You should not start things close to the time of Tefillah. So here, the first two halachas will be things that you should not do close to the time of Shabbos beginning, because you may end up violating Shabbos. So they are as follows: a tailor should not walk out with his needle, because he may continue walking with it when Shabbos is begun, he'll be carrying. And a scribe should not walk out holding his quill. Now that's a bigger chiddush because the quill is more visible. Also, the quill is something you hold in your hand. You don't stick it in your cloak like the tailor used to. Yet, even though it's easier to remember not to carry it when Shabbos has begun, still you should not walk out close to Shabbos. Now, another halacha that Chazal created to have people avoid being over an Isser D'Oraisa of Shabbos, this person should not pick the lice off his garments. The Gemara will explain why. The next thing is, as one should not read by the light of a candle on Shabbos. And this is referring to an oil lamp, where often the candle would burn low, and that's because the oil was too far away from the wick. And what the way to fix that is to tilt the candle, which is a cup that held the oil, so that the oil draws closer to the wick. However, that is an Isser D'Oraisa of Mavir. So you shouldn't read, because you may subconsciously, you may inadvertently, without thinking about it, you may just be in the middle of engrossing what you're reading and reach up absentmindedly and tilt the cup with the oil in it. Now the Gemara says there are certain circumstances which you are allowed to read, and that's if you're not really reading in depth, you're just briefly glancing at something, such as the Gabbai who wants to figure out where the lady is going to be tomorrow, so he wants to see what the people, the children who are saying over the parsha, what they're saying, or a teacher who wants to see where he should start teaching tomorrow. Okay, now, those are all Shabbos halachas. Now we have one which is not related to Shabbos, which says that a zava should not eat together with a zav. The reason is because it gets them used to something which might bring it to an Aveira. Now, a zava is like a nida. Today, in our days, they're not indistinguishable. In the days of Chazal, there were differences in the halacha, but as far as this is concerned, they're the same. Also, a zava has a higher level of tumah. A zav is a man who has a discharge from his urethra, which is not a seminal charge, it's something else, and it creates a tremendous amount of tumah on him, a very high level tumah. Now, the halacha over here is that even though they are both tummy, so there's no concern that one will be metami, the other one's food, still they should not eat together, because they are, if they are husband and wife, they are fitting to be with each other, and by eating together it may come to a closeness which might bring them to be together. Certainly, if one of them is tummy, one of them is tahar, they should not eat together, because they'll also end up with one of them being metami, the other one's food. This is the general source of a lot of the halachos of harchakos between a man and his wife when she's in nida by food and meal times. Now we begin the Gemara. The Mishnah had listed a number of safeguards that the Chachamim made to prevent a person from being given Aveira D'Oraisa. The Gemara now discusses another one, and this will bring us into the subject of, did they make these safeguards to prevent an Isser D'Oraisa only, or did they even make the safeguards to prevent an Isser D'Rabbanan? So the Gemara first quotes another Mishnah elsewhere, which says the following halacha: a person should not stand in a Rishus HaRabim and drink something which is in Rishus HaYachid from a cup, meaning he should not lean his head into the Rishus HaYachid and drink something there, and he shouldn't do vice versa as well. The reason is because he may inadvertently bring the cup from the Rishus that it is into the Rishus that he is in which case he'll be transferring from Rishus Ram to Rishus HaYachid or vice versa, and he will violate carrying the D'Oraisa. However, the Mishnah continues, if he leans his head and the majority of his body all the way into the other Rishos, then we're not going to be concerned that he's going to bring the cup back to where his feet is, and it's permitted. Now the Gemara has a machlokes. the Mishnah ends off and it says the same thing applies to a wine press. Okay, the same thing applies to a wine press, not explained. The Gemara will get into that. And now the Gemara quotes in Machlokes. What about a caramelist? What about if the cup of wine is in a caramelist and you are standing either in Rosh Hashanah or Rosh Hashanah? So transferring an object from a caramelist to either the other two Rishuyos is only derabanan. So do we say that we have a gzeira, don't drink with your head sticking into the caramelist because you may forget and bring the cup into where you are, in which case you violate carrying derabanan, or do we not? So the Gemara says, Machlokes Abaye and Rava. Abaye says, yes, we do. Rava says, no, we only make a gzeira to prevent an issur d'oraisa. We don't make what's called a gzeira l'gzeira, a decree to prevent another decree. Caramelist itself is a decree to prevent an issur, and we don't make another decree to prevent people from violating the decree of caramelists. Okay? Good. Now the Gemara brings proofs to either side. Somebody says, look at the Mishnah. The Mishnah says, same thing applies to a wine press. What does it mean, same thing applies to a wine press? What kind of wine press? If it's a Rishus Harabim, and you're in Rishus Yachid, we said it already. If it's a Rishus Yachid, you're in Rishus Harabim, we also said it already. What must it be? A wine press, which is a caramelist. So now you see that the Mishnah is clearly adding this halacha, and I'm right, it does apply even to a caramelist. Rabbi says that's not what it means, it's not what it's talking about. It's not talking about a caramelist, it's not talking about anything to do with carrying. It's talking about the halacha of meiser. What's halacha of meiser? Meiser of all produce works as follows. You are not chayav to take meiser d'oraisa from any produce until its processing is finished. However, midrabanan, you're only allowed to snack on it. You're not allowed to take a long-term eating session from it. Now, with wine, the processing is complete when the wine is pressed out of the grapes and then is transferred from the wine press to a storage tank. So the Gemara says, what is the halacha about drinking from the press before it's transferred to the storage tank? So, like everything else, the halacha is that you're allowed to drink a snack briefly, but you're not allowed to drink a permanent drinking. So Rava says that the halacha is as follows. When you're leaning over the wine press and drinking out of the wine press itself, that counts as a snack. Therefore, it is permitted. If, however, you take the cup away from the wine press, you're not leaning over the wine press anymore, then you're not likely to pour it back, and therefore you're going to finish the whole cup, and therefore it's not a snack. It's considered to be a permanent drinking, and is forbidden because the Rabbanan, you're not allowed to have a permanent partaking of food which has not been meisered, even when the processing is not finished. Remember, this wine is not considered to be processed yet because it hasn't been moved out of the press into the storage tank. So, therefore, Rava says, this Mishnah is telling you you're allowed to lean your head over the wine press and drink. You are not allowed to take it with you away from being over the wine press and stop and drink there, because that would be a permanent drinking. Now, Rava says, I will prove that this halacha is correct because we have a three-way machlokes in a Mishnah as to how one is allowed to drink. The discussion is what type of drinking from a wine press is considered to be permanent and therefore forbidden. So there are three sheets. Rabbi Meir says as long as you're leaning over the press, it's okay. It doesn't matter whether or not you diluted the wine. You have to be leaning over the press. Rav Elazar bar Tzaddik says if you diluted it with water, you're unlikely to pour it back, and therefore it's permanent drinking. It is a kavua, a drinking, and it's not allowed. The Chachamim say it depends what you diluted it with. If you diluted it with hot water, you're not going to pour it back into the rest of the wine press because hot water will spoil the rest of the wine. If it's cold water, then it could be you will pour it back and you are allowed. However, we clearly see that Rav Meir says it doesn't go by diluting, it goes by leaning over. And this Mishnah is a Stam Mishnah, so therefore it goes according to Rabbi Meir, and that's exactly what it means when it says, and the same halacha applies to a wine press. Now the Gemara goes back to the issue of, do we say exer l'gzera, do we make a rabbinic law to protect a rabbinic law, or only to protect a deraisa law? And the Gemara tries to bring a couple of proofs either way. So the Gemara's first three proofs will be from the case in the Mishnah, which we just saw, about a tailor carrying his needle. Now the halacha is you're only chayav deraisa for carrying a needle in a normal manner, the way it's normally held in your hand on Shabbos. Okay, if it's not carried normally, it's only an Isser D'Rabbanan, and if you're carrying it before Shabbos, it could at most be an Isser D'Rabbanan to protect you from carrying it on Shabbos. So, the Mishnah said that a tailor is not allowed to carry his needle before Shabbos. And the Gemara first wants to say, it's probably talking about where he carried it pinned to his cloak, like tailors usually do. Now, that's not normal carrying. So, even if it would be Shabbos, it would only be an Isser D'Rabbanan. Yeah, we say you can't carry it before Shabbos. So the Mishnah says, no, it's not talking about where he was carrying it pinned to his cloak, it's talking about where he was carrying it in his hand. And therefore, if he would carry it that way on Shabbos, it would be an Isser D'Oraisa. So the Mishnah says, don't carry it that way before Shabbos to protecting him from an Isser D'Oraisa. The Mishnah says, okay, I have another Mishnah that says a tailor is not allowed to carry his needle pinned to his cloak. So that is an Isser D'Rabbanan. Now, probably it's talking about he's not even allowed to carry it that way before Shabbos, to protecting him from the Isser D'Rabbanan of carrying it that way on Shabbos. The Gemara says, no, this is only talking about on Shabbos. It's telling you that there's an Isser D'Rabbanan to carry things in a strange way, and therefore he's not allowed to carry it that way on Shabbos. So before Shabbos he's allowed to. That would be Gzeir L'Gzeir. The Gemara says, hold on, I have a brisa which puts both together. It says a tailor is not allowed to carry his needle pinned to his garment before Shabbos. This is definitely a Gzeir L'Gzeir, because even if it would be on Shabbos, he would only be an Isser D'Rabbanan because it's pinned to his cloak. Okay, the Gemara says that here, not a raya, because this is the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says normal carrying depends on the person. Most people carry things in their hand. A workman, a artisan who carries his tools in a certain peculiar manner, because that is the way that they do things, that counts as normal for him, and therefore the tailor carrying the needle pinned to his cloak is the normal way of carrying it. If he would do that on Shabbos, he'd be chayav deraisa, and therefore this brisa says he's not allowed to do it that way before Shabbos to protect him from being over in Isser deraisa. Should he continue carrying it that way even when Shabbos begins? Now the Gemara expounds on Rabbi Yehuda's opinion and brings a number of examples of people who will be over in Isser deraisa if they carry things in a funny way, because for them it's normal. And those are as follows: a tailor carrying a needle pinned to his garment, it's a normal way for him. A carpenter with his ruler behind his ear, it's a normal way he carries it. A comber who usually combs cloth to fluff it up, so he can't carry his rope with him. It was a tool of his trade, and they usually had it strung over his ear. Now, a weaver who has a cloth that he stuffs into his needle spool so that only one thread comes out at a time, and he used to carry that stopper behind his ear, he shouldn't do that either. Somebody who sells colored cloth should not carry his display cloth with all the colors. He used to carry that draped over his shoulder. Shouldn't do that either. That would also be the rest on Shabbos. And a money changer with his coin behind his ear, that's where he carries that, would also be an Isser. All these things are not a normal way of carrying it, but for the craftsman, it is. Now, Rabbi Yehuda says all these is different Isser, but the Tanna Kamma says it's only Isser D'Rabbanan. So here we see those opinions. The Gemara now quotes a contradiction between two brises, and the Gemara wants to pin the contradiction on the machlekes we just learned. So the two brises are discussing the halacha of a zov, again one who had an emission dripping out of him, and he would often wear a sanitary cloth to catch those discharges. So there's a contradiction between two brises as to if he wears that cloth on Shabbos in the street, does he violate an Isser D'Rabbanan or an Isser D'Oraisa? So the Gemara wants to say it's on this very issue. The Tanna Kamma, which we saw earlier, who is Reb Meir, who says that it's got to be normal for everybody to be an Isser D'Oraisa, so says it's not normal for most people to wear a sanitary cloth, and therefore it's only an Isser D'Rabbanan. Rabbi Yehuda says that if it's normal for you as an Isser D'Oraisa, would say it's normal for the Zav, so it's an Isser D'Oraisa. The Gemara says it's not correct. You're understanding Reb Meir wrong. Reb Meir doesn't say that it has to be normal for everybody in order for it to be an Isser D'Oraisa. If that would be true, then any amateur who did a do-it-yourself job on Shabbos would not be chayiv D'Oraisa, because he's not a professional. He didn't do it. It's not normal for him to do it. Certainly Rabbi Meir doesn't hold that way. He holds that if it's normal for you, you chayav d'oraisa, just like Rabbi Yehuda. Their argument about the needle with the tailor was that Rabbi Meir held that each of those cases, it's not really normal for them to hold it that way. It's only normal for them to hold it stuck wherever they stuck it in order to advertise their wares. But other than that, they would carry it the same as everyone else, and therefore he holds that it's really not normal. Now therefore, in the case of the Zav, Rabbi Meir would certainly agree it's normal for a Zav to wear that sanitary cloth, and therefore he's chayav d'oraisa for it. What then is the answer to the contradiction between the two brises? So Rav Nuna says the difference is if we are referring to a Zav who saw 2 emissions already, or he saw 3 emissions. Once he's seen 3, then he has to bring a carbon. So somebody who saw 2 has to keep track of how many he's seeing, therefore he needs the cloth there to count. Somebody who saw 3 doesn't make a difference anymore. He already knows he has to bring a carbon. The Gemara says this can't be true, because it does make a difference, because he wants to start counting whether he has clean days. A Zav needs 7 clean days in a row to leave his state of Tumas Ziva. So therefore he absolutely needs to see if he's having discharges or not. So it's okay, but we're talking about where he saw it already on that day. So therefore this day is definitely not a clean day. Why does he need the sanitary cloth there now? The Gemara says no, he needs it anyway. He needs it to keep his clothing clean. The Gemara says no. So this brisa is not concerned about keeping your clothing clean. That's not a real reason for him to wear it, and therefore it's still considered to be not normal for him to wear it, and therefore he's still only chayav d'Rabbanan, because this Tana holds that keeping things clean is not considered a halachically significant reason. And I'll prove it to you from a case of hechsher tumah. The halacha is that fruits that are picked off the ground cannot be makabel tumah until they become wet in a manner in which the owner is happy with the liquid that falls on it. Either he's happy that it fell on it, or he's happy that it fell where it fell. And we have a case which is as follows. Somebody who puts a plate on top of a wall, and the water comes from the plate onto his fruits. Does that count as if the owner is happy with it or not? So it depends. If he put the plate there in order to wash the plates, and then he's definitely happy about the water that falls on it. And if it later splashes onto fruits, it counts as he was happy about it, and the fruits become ready to be mekabel tumah. If, however, he put the plate upside down on top of the wall in order to protect the wall from damage by the rain, then it doesn't count as if he's happy about the water, doesn't want the water there, and therefore it's not machshir the fruits that they fall on. And this is the author of our brisa, who says that it's not halachically significant if you put something there to protect things. The Gemara says, what kind of comparison is that? Over there, he doesn't want any water at all, which is it wouldn't be raining. There's no point in having the water there. Here, the Zav needs the cloth there. He needs it to catch the drips. If you want to compare it to something, compare it to the case of where he put a bowl to catch drips from a leak in the roof, and he put it right side up in order that he should catch the water. There, he wants to protect his floor, but he also wants to catch the drip, so he wants both factors, so he needs them both, and therefore that is considered like it is halachically significant.